Hi, this is Phil with Walk Through the Bible. Welcome to Moments in Marriage. Do you ever get into what we get into in our house where we're comparing ourselves to each other? I mean, whose contribution to the family is more important? Whose job takes the priority when there's battling for calendar supremacy? Especially in our generation when so many families, I mean, just to be able to have a shot at buying a house, it demands two incomes. And it's easy to put those careers up against each other. More and more couples are saying, well, there's his money and there's her money. And what happens if one earns significantly more than the other? How do you navigate that? Do you prorate the bills based on the size of the paycheck? There's an alternative to that competition, and it's unity. And I know the word unity, we think it just means everybody is happy all the time. It actually is the same root word as unit. To view yourself not as, competition, but as a partnership, that you really are one. And so all the assets that come into the home, those belong to both of you, so that both of your contributions are equally important. There's a lot of evaluation going on of what's cultural, what's biblical, what about traditional roles, are they all gone? There's a couple in the Bible that doesn't solve all those problems for us, but they give great insight for us. Their story is found in a number of places. We meet them first in Acts 18. Their names are Aquila and Priscilla, and they were from Rome, but the persecution against all the Jews drove them out of Rome, and they end up living in Corinth for a while. And while they're in Corinth, they meet a guy named Paul. He's come to the Lord now. He's beginning to travel, and he's a bold teacher, and yet he's got to support himself, and he has a part-time job as a tent maker. It's cool that term tent making has come down through the ages. I mean, the majority of pastors globally, they don't pastor full-time. We'd call them bivocational. They're also sometimes called tent makers. It comes from this passage right here. And Aquila and Priscilla, they just encourage Paul so much. He's experiencing so much rejection from so many of the Jews, but they place their trust in Jesus Christ. They're as committed to Jesus as he is. And so when he moves on to Ephesus, they go with him. In fact, there's other places he travels, they go with him. There's other times he goes, okay, you stay here. I'm going on there. You hold things together here. These two are two of the best partners in ministry Paul will ever have in his ministry. But there's a subtle change that happens in chapter 18. It's fascinating. Their culture would demand you always use the guy's name first. That's why they're introduced as Aquila and Priscilla. But you see as the chapter unfolds that more times than not, Priscilla gets top billing. I wonder what that was like. I mean, that goes so against their culture, and yet there's not even a hint of Aquila being upset about this. I mean, were her gifts more public-facing? Was she more extroverted than he was? Maybe she was just more gifted than he was. Who knows? Maybe she's farther along spiritually. We don't know the answers to that, but this certainly would have gone against cultural norms, and yet there's not a hint of Aquila being uncomfortable with it. He seems to champion her strengths like she champions his strengths, and God, there's no hint of condemnation from God either. There's one of the coolest things is a guy named Apollos comes through town and he's preaching and he's educated and he's passionate and he knows the scriptures well, but he doesn't know everything. And they take him to their home, and again, this is one of the places that lists Priscilla first, and they teach him the way of the Lord more accurately. What a team these two made together. It just shows me, and again, you may be a two-career family and maybe there's an imbalance in income. That doesn't make one of you more important than the other. Resist the temptation to keep your lives separate just to keep peace. Resist the temptation to keep score. Resist the temptation to just say, well, I'm more important than you because of these things that our culture values. You're a team. You're a unit. One of the women who used to work with us here at Walk Through the Bible, she got married. Now they have a couple of kids together. And she came from a really rough home. And so even the idea of being loved, she resisted that. And she made their marriage, by her own admission, pretty difficult. And her husband had a background in the armed forces. And she said, you know what finally got me? He would say to me over and over again, he'd say, one team, one fight. One team, one fight. And he had learned that from the soldiers that were in some pretty tough situations together, but he brought it into their marriage. That's how I want our home to be. One team, one fight. It's you and me against the world. Sometimes it's you and me even against our own kids, but we got to be one. We got to keep it together. We both make different contributions, but in God's eyes and in our eyes, they're equally important. I hope you're encouraged by this, but I also hope that you're challenged by this, because this perspective is not presented very often by our culture, and sadly, it's not even presented very often in many of our churches. But there it is in Acts 18. Read it for yourself, talk it over, and see if there's some changes that you need to make in your relationship, in your home, to replace competition with unity. Let me know your thoughts. Phil at walkthrough.org. We're still struggling through this one. Each phase, we have to face new challenges as we live together more and more years in marriage, but it's worth processing that to establish the kind of oneness that was part of God's original design with Adam and Eve in the beginning. That's the target. That's our goal. Let me know how you're processing it, and we'll see you again on Moments in Marriage.